welcome Catherine, who's stayed up late on our behalf this evening to chat with us, and Gigi about their experience with Out of the Wings, because it was in fact the relationship together that gave us this beautiful translation at last. So thank you all for joining us in the audience in Las Vegas, and thank you, Catherine. And Gigi, take it away.
Yes, thank you so much, Catherine. I think it's about midnight in London, and thank you for joining us. So, Complemento is a play that my grandfather wrote. I did not know my grandfather at all, ever, and I didn't even know my father until I turned 16. And then my father was wise enough to teach me, to get to know me through this play. And in doing so, he introduced me to my grandfather, who had already passed on. But my father and I read this play together. And I couldn't understand the play fully because my Spanish was not that advanced. So, you know, it's a very poetic play. It's not plain spoken, and a lot of that went over my head. But I enjoyed reading the play with my father very much and getting to know him that way. And it was curious to me that my grandfather was a playwright, because I had already studied drama and performing arts and had already chosen that as my career path. So I found that interesting. Anyway, years pass, and eventually I decided that I wanted to translate this play. And that's what brought me to Out of the Wings. My first attempt at translating the play was unsuccessful. I was in college. I was given a project to choose a play, have it approved by my professor, and then write an analysis of the play. I chose Complemento, and I offered to translate the play as well as analyze it. And my teacher said, no, we're focusing on the masters of modern drama here. And he directed me to a textbook that was full of all European and North American playwrights. No Latin American playwrights at all in this book. The book is like this thick. So I set aside my plans of translating the play, and I went on about my life. And in 2015, I decided it was time to finally translate the play. But I was very intimidated by it because I did some research and I found out that this was my grandfather's masterpiece. This particular play. He'd written many plays, but this one was the most famous one. So I didn't want to start there. Nonetheless, I had questions. I went online, I researched, I wanted to find out about translation, and in doing so, I found Out of the Wings. I found their website, which is a collection of translated plays from Spanish and Portuguese. It's a wonderful resource. And I sent an email just inquiring, and Catherine answered my email. I didn't expect that she would, but I was very blessed that she emailed me right away. What really attracted me to her was there was exactly one translated Colombian play. I was trying to find out who translates Colombian plays, and there was one in their collection. So Catherine responded, and we started a relationship of tete-a-tetes of translators. And well, Catherine, perhaps you'd like to say something about how we got here.
Well, it's lovely. It's funny. It's still funny being on Zoom thinking, where am I? Because in my brain, I'm in Las Vegas with you all, and in reality, I'm in South London at midnight and still with you all. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about the connections that we can make. Out of the Wings started precisely as Gigi is describing from her experience as a way of bringing together people who are interested in translation, who are interested in Latin American theatre, or theatre in the first instance from the Hispanic-speaking world. As an academic, I worked on researching and understanding theatre in Latin America for over 30 years now. And when I started, there's very few people in the UK that were doing that. And there were some in the United States as well, but still it wasn't regarded as a really important area of academic study. And I persisted, and it was really important to me to do it. But one of the things that became more and more clear to me as I went on was that sense that I was alone and that there weren't very many people doing this work. And also in my travels in Latin America, I was bringing lots of plays, lots of manuscripts back, physically bringing them back at that time before the internet, really collecting manuscripts and bringing them back. And I always use the metaphor of this sort of idea of a bottleneck, that I was the only person that had all this information, or one of the few people that had all this information. So everything started from a real desire to share, and to share the knowledge that I was gathering personally, but also to bring together other people who are doing that work, because you never know who's doing that work. As Gigi's saying, you go on the internet and you find out. At that time, you just, I don't know how, I can't even remember how you made connections before the internet. But the key thing was to bring together people, to work collectively, to create teams of people who work in finding out about theatres across the Spanish and Portuguese-speaking worlds, and then to bring them together to translate, to produce, to research. And that's what we've been doing. So Out of the Wings as an academic research project started in around about 2008, and now it's a collective of people who do theatre translation. And one of the exciting things that's happened over the last few years, and Gigi and Rafael Guizado and Complemento and the other work that Gigi has translated is a real example of what's been happening, which is that we've been gathering together lots of people both within the UK and internationally. We're now on our mailing list. We have over 300 people who come, and one of the things that we do every month is have a table read of a new translated play. And Gigi's work, this is where Gigi's work made the connection with us. Gigi sending these plays that she started to translate. And then we just started, as we do with all our new translations, testing them in table reads, in different readings with different actors, and working out how they connect with us today. And I've just seen the very end of the play. I didn't see all of it. But yeah, I don't want to say too much about it because you've seen it. But what I felt there was in the design and the movement and the sound and the music and the words. I've already felt a connection. I wish I'd seen the whole thing, but that's what theatre translation, what we're doing, is all about, making those connections and really testing these plays and how they come to us and speak to us, from different places and different languages. I'll leave it there just now, Gigi, and then we can carry on the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank Catherine enough for inviting me to Out of the Wings and helping me hear the words, the translated words, and give me feedback and introduce me to other translators that I could learn from, and having a staged reading of Complemento. It takes many steps to get to the point that you saw today of a full production, and Out of the Wings was a huge step forward for me.
I mean, one of the things I would say about Guizado was that Rafael Guizado was not a name that was known to me, and I'm almost ashamed to say that now, given what I've learned through you, Gigi, and reading about him in terms of his place in Colombian theatre and the creation of Colombian radio drama. And it wasn't a voice or a theatre that I knew in terms of the nature of the theatre. And I remember from the first readings feeling that on the page it felt very strange and quite distant, and quite of its time. It didn't feel modern and contemporary in a sense. And I remember from the first reading that we did, how in this really small room in the university I work in, and with people online and Gigi online, the play started to come to life. And the conversations that we were having after it were absolutely about the lives we were living then. I can't remember the year that was, Gigi, it was 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And I think when we did the reading of Complemento, I remember feeling the same thing, that something was happening on stage with this character and the you know, the family, the group that he interacts with, something quite transformative that it's quite difficult to put, you know, to put your finger on and really define. But I think that's one of the magical things about that play, that you're living this transformative experience without, you know, without being asked to define it. And I think that's a beautiful poetic aspect of the play.
Thank you. I'm Sarah. If you can't see me, Catherine, my voice is in another microphone.
I can hear you well.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to let people know that in the audience, you're welcome to ask questions, and we just need you to, we'll say them into a microphone so that we're sure the sound is getting to all the places. But if you have any questions at any time, you can feel free to let me know, and we'll make sure we can ask it. I'll get the ball rolling on that. I wondered, for our audience that might not know what it's like when writers get together, how do you start a conversation about a play? As writers, as we're here having a conversation as a group about a play, what's a good question you'd like to ask a play when you first meet it?
Do you know, it's really interesting. I always say, when people say, what is Out of the Wings, and how do you do it, given that it's grown so much and you know, and the variety of things that we do, people say, what is it you do? And I always say, the most simple thing in the world, we do the most simple thing in the world. We meet and we read a play. And we read it all the way through in translation. And I think that's the first question you ask of it. You read it. I think we talk very often, and I know this from the academic world as well, you talk about things or authors or works, and then you realise that the company you're in hasn't read it. And I think that very simple act of reading together a play, you know, and reading it cold, and people who are reading, some of them are actors, some aren't actors, it doesn't really matter. Inviting people to use their voice in the play is the first step. And from that, questions always arise. You never, I think you'll agree, Gigi, in our conversations afterwards, there's never a silence. There's never a sense that we don't have something to say about the play. And I think that's my answer, Sarah, that's it, read it. And share reading. Sharing reading is a very beautiful thing to do.
Yes, and you know what I think I love about what you said there, is it exemplifies the entire function of this particular art form. You know, that why are we all here, transatlantic in the middle of the night and here in Las Vegas? Someone had an idea once, and they told a story, and that story was told decades ago on another continent beneath the equator, and people came together around that story, and the story was compelling enough for us to come together again. And when people are at a loss, especially these days, with all of the strain and disconnection we feel or might fear, all it took was a willingness to come together and share the story sort of in real time. And somehow questions together becomes a connection. And that's one of the things I love, is that what artists do is they never stop trying to send out a signal into outer space in the hope that someone receives it. What do you think about that, Gigi?
Yes, that's what happened. I sent out a signal. But as I said, I was 99% convinced that it would just go and get no response. But another thing that Catherine, that we often do in the table reads, is to ask the people who played the parts, what was their reaction to the script? And that often generates quite an interesting start to a conversation.
I'm giving Complemento the director's eye, just so he knows. The reward of the title role is all the pressure, including the talkback. And I told the actors I wouldn't make them say anything, but of course, never trust a Complemento. To tell you all the truth. What do you think, Jake?
Upon first read?
Yeah. Or playing it. Just share it, what it's like to be him, and so Catherine can hear you.
You had to say all those words.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to all those words?
It's initially a lot of pressure, but just even reading the words, you feel the fun, you feel the eccentricities, and you can really feel the love that he's constantly trying to spread. Whether it's to the other characters, or to the audience, or to the reader. There is something that Guizado does that just makes everything, all the problems in life feel trivial in comparison to the love that we receive. And the beauty of that, and the beauty of that dichotomy.
I think that you can tell why he got the part, because his soul connects to the play so well.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Because it takes a lot of love and a miracle of hope to learn all the lines in a new translation for a part like this. We talked a lot, if you're familiar with studying plays, then the structure of the story, the types of characters, remind us all of Molière. If you've ever known any of those wily servants who gets in all the master's business and then gets the gold in the end, kind of commedia dell'arte tradition. This is a classic in that sense. And that's one of those things as a theater director, it's like a great musical, even a brand new musical, has that sort of classic like structure underneath that feels like, okay, this playwright knew what they were doing. This is going to be a solid comedic romantic experience. And it's because of that wily servant character that every actor wants to play until they get the part, and then they curse themselves every rehearsal. There were sprained thumbs. He missed his sister's wedding to make our opening night last night. The dedication of this actor is beyond the pale. Any of the ladies in our cast like to share about the female characters? Anyone have a thought about what it was like? What's it like to be Elvira? Because this particular actress, she was not a part of the other play going on, but she had an entire play all her own at the end. What's it like to try to connect your own experience to the rest of the story, since you're part of it, but you're also on your own?
Yes, it was interesting to say the least, because I start a whole brand new story of my own, but it is also just wrapped up into what this family has experienced. And playing Elvira, I had to really dig deep into my past experiences and what exactly could I bring to this role. It was so well thought out that I really had to just give it my all. The cast itself, thank you all for still being so welcoming and such a family, even though I was not a part of the cast family. And I never felt like the outsider, so I thank you all for that. And thank you both for giving me this platform. I've constantly said that this is such a beautiful play about love and family and trust, and to you, Sarah, for believing in me, and you, Gigi, as well, to basically have this whole, Complementos is what we were going to call it. The sequel, it was just so great, and it just shows a whole full circle that we have those people that come into our lives that play that exact same role in their lives over and over, but it's different, and it's still just full of love and full of trust.
Yeah, beautiful, thank you.
Gigi, if we could just ask Catherine, and both of you, this question of translation and representation and the responsibility of artists to this work. Because I think looking at this beautiful cast and hearing all the things they have to share and seeing their talents and realizing that for me as a producer, what this creates is the opportunity, the proper opportunity to make the space that belongs to everyone in the arts community to be on stage And that this is about not just giving performers a chance to play parts. It's about honoring the stories and the culture that's a part of our human legacy. I always tell people that our culture is our legacy and the reflection of our humanity. And that when we deny the voice that artists try to create from all walks of life, from all points of view, then we're not doing 100% of the job as artists, as opportunity creators, as theater makers. And so from my perspective, I was very interested in the passion that Gigi and Out of the Wings show about this issue. So I just wanted to be sure we brought that up before we send everyone away from both of your points of view, both from across the pond and from here.
Sure, well, I'll just say briefly, and then I'll pass it to you, Catherine, because I think your perspective on it is extremely valuable. I'll just say for myself that I went to college to study theater, and I didn't have much exposure to Latin American theater. It was like one sentence description, and there was one guest artist who is Latin American who came and brought a play that he had written, and we did produce it. I was assistant stage manager on that play. It was a beautiful play. And so it's not that I had no exposure, but the amount of exposure that I had was this big in a curriculum that was longer than I am tall. And even my own efforts to dig into it were cast aside. So most of what I know about Latin American theater, I have researched on my own. Everything I know about Gigi Guizado, I researched on my own. And one has to ask, one of the questions that I was trying to answer for myself when I reached out to Catherine is, who decides what gets translated?
I can't really answer that question because it's huge, and we could be here all night or all afternoon for you. I'm going to go back to the question about how we ask questions of plays. I'm not going to take long, because, but there's three things I wanted to say. I think one of the things, when we're reading, one of the ways that we approach the text and the first reading at our table reads is that the translator will come along with specific questions that they have, or doubts, and very often it's about titles. It will be about cultural transfer, it will be about sayings, or about how you translate humour. It's all sorts of things, about things that could be said in the 19th century or the 16th century that you couldn't say now, or even in the 50s that you couldn't say now. So these questions start to open up the conversation. The word trust has come up a few times in what you've been saying there in Las Vegas, and the actors and Gigi and Sarah. And I think I always say that one of the biggest things that you need in translating is trust in the text. And it's trust that the text that you're translating somehow has got something to say, to yourself here, but also to collective, to the community that you're part of. And I think the process of translation is a process of trust, a process of trusting that at each stage, as you bring, for example, Complemento from a first reading, or Guizado, or anyone from first reading through to a staged reading, through to production like this, that at each point you're trusting that there's something there, and that you're discovering what is there that will speak to us here and now. And I think if that trust keeps building, then you know that you get something that, that I was going to say it's worth translating, but it's not that belittles it, that will really speak to us and will really open up our minds. For me, translation is about constantly opening up your mind and constantly questioning where you are now, constantly questioning your position so you become mobile and open to the world. And the last thing I'll say is that I often say to my students that You can tell when a play is robust, and then they say, what does that mean? And I really struggle to explain what that means. But what I think it means, what I've come to understand that to mean, is that as you take the play on this incredibly long journey, for example, from Gigi Guizado, writing it through to now, and that you do everything that a translation and a production and reading and acting and lighting and everything does to it, and it still remains as a complete and coherent whole that can communicate something to the audience, then that's a robustness. And I think that robustness, which might not be a very sort of aesthetically pleasing or romantic term in terms of language, but for me it's something that makes me really believe in the process of translation, actually. And I think that's the best plays, and the best, I'm not making some sort of hierarchical judgment there, but the plays that really keep you going and moving across that time are the ones that will keep responding to the questions that we throw at them all the way through the process, and still keep standing and still allow us to do the job of communicating.
Oh, yes, most beautiful. Thank you, Catherine. I just wanted to mention one last thing about that, this thing about the English language. We are, there's a lot we're not exposed to because in America, we're born in a world that was already dominating. And so there's a lot that people get from us, but there's a lot that we don't get back on a two-way street. And one of the things about translating things into English, it's an opportunity to connect to people who want to be connected, and it's just the language barrier is the only thing. And one of the things we've learned since our connection to the pro-English theater in Ukraine and our work with Out of the Wings is how massive the enthusiasm is from artists around the world to work with us, even if just remotely. Writers, directors, you name it. There's opportunities for artists in Las Vegas to share and exchange, and the Asylum is a place to help connect you to that. And the pro-English theaters realize that there's other theaters in Ukraine, of course. Eastern Europe, like most of Europe, has a lot of art and culture when they're not being bombed. And they realized that they were actually the one that was getting the most attention because they're the English-speaking one. And so they became a life-saving connection for their community during the war. And they've now formed a Western English-speaking theaters, a World English-speaking theaters association called WEST, where it's English-speaking theaters from around the world, from Africa, every continent, have connected. And the Asylum is one of the founding members of the core group of WEST. And they've been promoting our production here to everyone, all the members around the world. And the recordings of this production, the Winchester has made one for the county that they will put up on their website after they edit the film within a week or so, like in a short order. And then we're going to receive this lovely version that we have in the works right now. And we will also have that. And this recording will then reach out, and people will know, the world will know that Las Vegas is a place in America open to the rest of it. And it's because of people like you, Catherine, who have done a lot of groundwork, blazing the trail, and artists like Gigi who have refused to let the story be silenced, who just dropped a huge gift in the lap of the Asylum Theatre. And I just hope that the rest of the community knows this is an invitation to find all the other ways that we can rise, lift up your voices and share them with the world. And we'll just keep trying to keep these connections and strengthen them. And we look forward to bringing some more Out of the Wings work from the other side of the pond this way in the seasons ahead. So like I said, the Asylum does not build roads, we build bridges. They're two-way streets. So thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Gigi. Thank you, Raphael. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Complemento.